could go onto countless pathways that might head in two ends when it comes to pursuing their personal values. So,
would you embark on the path to a righteous life?
Or would you venture down the inferno and satisfy your ego?
I am Alyssa Go
I am Maxine Uy.
And I am Mitzi Pantaleon.
from the University of the Philippines Diliman Extension Program in Pampanga under Business Management. We will be discussing how we possess varying perspectives about morality with The Ring of Gyges by Plato, as well as Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche, together with A Good Life in a Bad World by Professor A.C. Grayling, in this video entitled Good or Evil, a Synthesis.
Starting off with the foundation of this discussion, what are Ring of Gyges by Plato and Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche all about? The Ring of Gyges by Plato is a philosophical quest concerning the nature of humanity when granted anonymity without restraint. It features a shepherd named Gyges who took hold of a ring with the power of invisibility. With the ring, he grabbed every opportunity in order to attain all his desires, even to the detriment of others. According to Martin 2015, people are willing to do anything to achieve and satisfy their needs when given anonymity. We are only just because we lack this miraculous ring. Thus, we are afraid of facing the consequences of our wrongdoing. In reality, we are aware that committing an injustice is far more advantageous. To quote Ring of Gyges, and thus, Socrates, gods and men are said to unite in making the life of the unjust better than the life of the just. Nowadays, the struggle of our society can be rooted in the flawed justice system we have. The government has become a playground of some criminals abusing their position to benefit themselves. Still, they are not held accountable because of their power to conceal their actions and manipulate the truth. And worse, these dishonest politicians present themselves in a positive light as someone doing good for the Filipinos. This can be connected to the line, "The highest reach of injustice is to be deemed just when you are not." To sum up, the Ring of Gyges challenges one's moral actions and reasons, and the ring in the wrong hands may render one invisible in the external world, but it would further reveal who he truly is beneath.
Moving on to Friedrich Nietzsche, he is one of the greatest thinkers of modern philosophy, where he published his book entitled Beyond Good and Evil in 1886. This marks the beginning of his criticisms of Christianity. Quintessential to Nietzsche's argument was his challenge to the thinkers to go beyond the current ideals of morality indoctrinated by religion. He wants people to become open to possibilities of varying perspectives of morality. The requirement of one morality for all is a detriment to higher men. Let me give a sample scenario. Some societies, particularly conservative ones like the Philippines, condemn homosexuality, but this belief tramples upon the rights of LGBTQIA+ members. Therefore, the general welfare or the good of all cannot be attained, and we must not reduce morality to a single standard. Furthermore, Nietzsche introduced the concept of higher men. They are the complete men who possess unbroken strength of will and a desire for power to guarantee their future. This leads us to Nietzsche's two types of morality, namely the master morality and the slave morality. First is the master morality, or the morality of the nobles. The idea of good is associated with nobility, and nobility is equated to greatness, fearlessness, artistry, power, glory, and wealth. In contrast, evil is associated with despicability, and this is equated to pity, mediocrity, or naivety. On the other hand, slave morality, or the morality of the oppressed, denigrates the master morality. For them, there is no genuine happiness in master morality. The slaves turn their weaknesses into good. For example, being poor is humility. The virtue of the masters becomes evil, such as glory into narcissism. However, Nietzsche asserts that life is essentially appropriation, injury, the conquest of the weak, suppression, and exploitation. For him, exploitation is part of human nature, stemming from our intrinsic will to power. For instance, pleasure and desire for power are parts of human nature, but Christianity condemns such and labels them as immoral. Christianity sets its moral codes as the absolute truth, but morality is not as simple as good versus evil because other moral interpretations may come in. The only true knowledge of morality is that there is no single morality.
Since we are done with the abstract of the two readings, Beyond Good and Evil and The Ring of Gyges, we can now proceed with their integration by breaking down their similarities and differences into a few important points. First is self-interest versus the common good. In Beyond Good and Evil, we tackle that the good of all is unattainable because what is good for one is a detriment to another. Likewise, the Ring of Gyges emphasized that once a man is given power, regardless of how just or unjust, he would do anything to accomplish his personal goals. In doing so, the common good is no longer found. To formally define, the common good refers to anything that benefits all members of the community rather than things that only benefit an individual or specific sectors, as per Longley of 2020. However, self-interest is always in conflict with the common good. If a person would have the power of anonymity, he is more likely to use it for selfish reasons. For example, a poor man was given the chance to do anything without suffering repercussions. He might use this advantage to improve his life situation by stealing from the rich. If we put ourselves in his shoes, we might do the same thing. But this act is considered unjust for the victims. When self-interest becomes the priority, it becomes impossible to achieve the common good. Second is desire for power. Another point of similarity concerns our intrinsic will to power. It was discussed in Beyond Good and Evil that higher men have the power and unyielding will to epitomize their goals in spite of the circumstances. There are those who own up to their human nature. Correspondingly, the Ring of Gyges presents us with two choices. Either we use the ring or we do not. But individuals are disposed to using the ring even at the expense of harming other people. In the business world, exploitation is a common phenomenon. The higher-ups exploit the labor force to manufacture products, gain a higher profit, and improve their business status. We could also look at this desire for power from a different perspective. For instance, a journalist may use his power for the completion of his ambition to uncover the truth and crimes of corrupt politicians. Therefore, the Ring of Gyges and Beyond Good and Evil both highlight how individuals make choices that would guarantee their ambitions because of their desire for power.
Third is human nature and reality. Nietzsche argued that to refrain mutually from injury, from violence, from exploitation, and put one's will on par with that of others is the will to the denial of life. This can be connected to the line in the Ring of Gyges, for the unjust is pursuing a reality. He does not live with a view to appearances. He wants to be really unjust and not to seem only. If truth be told, most of us are just because we fear the consequences of being unjust. We want to be accepted, honored, and rewarded, and so we abide by the rules and refrain from any forms of social injustices and immoral acts. For example, students refrain from cheating because they know that being caught would result in serious ramifications. Their reputations would be tainted and they would have to deal with failing grades or suspension. Whereas a perfectly unjust person is in the pursuit of human nature, parts of which are deemed immoral by society. Lastly, the genuine path to happiness. As aforementioned in Beyond Good and Evil, the slaves believe that the virtue or the path to happiness and master morality is not genuine. In the same manner, the Ring of Gyges challenges the readers into reflecting on our moral choices. It dares us to find an answer to the question, can we genuinely live a happy life despite committing injustices for the sake of elevating our lives? For the slaves, greed, power, wealth, and glory does not lead to happiness. A good life implies a good person who engages in noble causes instead of consuming all the time pursuing their selfish interests, as per Westacott 2020. He also described a good person as someone honest, kind, selfless, loyal, principled, and so on. And so we could attain all the riches in the world, the ultimate power, and the most lavish life there is, but there could never be contentment.
In spite of the similarities, Nietzsche's philosophy also contradicts with Plato in terms of the contrast between moral dogmatism and perspectivism. The central point of Nietzsche's argument is the incorporation of individual circumstances in moral philosophy. He argues that we cannot simply dichotomize it into good versus evil because there is a wider spectrum of moral interpretation. In the words of Arnold of 2019, Nietzsche labors to destroy the philosophical search for absolute moral truth. Moreover, Plato was said to be responsible for moral dogmatism, as of Arnold of 2019. Moral philosophers, like Plato, tend to impose their own standards as the absolute truth of morality. In the Ring of Gyges, we could assess how Plato wanted us to reflect on our moral choices, because a life of injustices would never result in happiness. In some way, Plato declares a good life is a virtuous life with merits and honor. It does not take into account how a good life for the nobles may not be a good life for the slaves. With the idea that having diverse values and viewpoints as to what is right or wrong could dictate how we lead our lives, a discussion by philosopher A.C. Grayling, entitled A Good Life in a Bad World, can contribute to the discussion. The video presents different subjects that offer an eye-opening experience on how we live, how we treat each other, as well as how we engage with the world around us.
Let us begin with the topic, what is a good life? According to Grayling, a good life is not a goody two-shoes life anchored to the conventions defined by society. In line with Beyond Good and Evil, moralists impose their standards because they perceive their own as the only path to virtue or the happiness of all. When a moral philosopher thinks that he is moral, he would then dictate his version of morality to other people. This limits humanity from forging their path toward a life of achievement. The rediscovery of enlightenment marked the turning point in history. It opened the people's minds to the notion that a good life is a free pursuit of a meaningful life concordant with an individual's talents, greatness, and capabilities beyond the boundaries of society. And this is what Nietzsche wants people to realize. We now move to the second topic entitled Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice, one of the beloved classics by Jane Austen, urges educated readers to introspect about their misjudgments and assumptions. This can be related to Nietzsche's argument about moral Tartuffism. It refers to religious hypocrisy, wherein moralists preach their own principles yet are intolerant of perspectives contrary to their ideals. Both Pride and Prejudice and Beyond Good and Evil seek to challenge the moral standards of the world because this hindered the path to exploring human diversity. Professor Grayling also discussed a renowned classic philosopher named Socrates. Socrates was known for challenging fellow Athenians to realize how little they know of the ideas they conform with because the Greeks wanted to ingrain the same uprightness to the youth. Similarly, Beyond Good and Evil challenges the thinkers to transcend from the social teachings and beliefs. If we simply accept others' beliefs, we fail to utilize the gifts of nature, our intellect and talents, to establish new ideas from our own thoughts. Hence, an educated man is not a man who claims knowledge of all things, but a man with a willing mind to learn and relearn what has been known. The third topic talks about confusion. In the philosophy of Socrates, confusion is a sign of being on the right path because he wanted the Greek society to think and criticize their assumptions of the universe. This can be correlated to Beyond Good and Evil. The point at issue here is the incarceration of human diversity brought by the structured assumptions and systems withholding people from becoming critical thinkers. For Nietzsche, we cannot prescribe a single code as the universal rule. A good life can be found by unearthing assumptions and challenging beliefs. This is the way of imbuing our own meaning into life.
Next, we will tackle The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. The myth of Sisyphus narrates the demise of Sisyphus, who was sentenced to eternal punishment after angering the gods. This raises the question, is it possible for Sisyphus, who was doomed to perpetual torment, to have a meaningful life? The most devastating phenomenon one can encounter is losing control over his life and letting it be controlled by society's decrees. It can be connected to Nietzsche's criticism of Christianity. Until now, their doctrines assert codes of conduct based on their perspective of good. In the search for the meaning of life, Camus asked the great philosophical question, should I or should I not commit suicide? The reasons must be rooted in your desires, ambitions, advocacies, and passion. This can be related to how Nietzsche wants people to live ambitiously without depending on the doctrines fed by society. Nietzsche was known for the phrase, God is dead. Here, he challenges the people on how they would live their lives when the source of their purpose, say the concept of God, no longer exists. He wants us to be brave enough to create our own purpose in life rooted in our unique set of values. As Grayling mentioned, it is a matter of choices of how you want to live your life and what you make of it for as long as you live. The next topic talks about the Council of Perfection, wherein it claims that everyone else is free to undertake anything they desire. However, we are not truly free to do so because the consequences are extremely confined. In regard to the ring of Gyges, we all possess the freedom or power to do anything we desire, much like owning the ring. But we are not completely liberated since there may be repercussions if we conduct wrongful acts and do not conform to societal norms enforced. Also, there can be only one factor Plato spoke of in correlation with a suitable utopian state that could be agreed upon, and that is, philosophers should lead the world, but otherwise, the ones he has to say about inequality should, and thus, it could be said that we can establish a utopian or ideal society, but it should not be in a manner of being inequitable or unfair to other people for the purpose of goodness. For the next subject, it talks about the Greek word called eudaimonia. The concept of well-being and well-doing in the pursuit of desired goals will be very diverse, one that each of us must be capable of recognizing for ourselves. This is directly relevant to the premise in the Ring of Gyges that every one of us has varied self-interests and ambitions. Therefore, we should be able to distinguish where it leans more, towards doing good or doing evil. This will allow you to understand how you define your life's satisfaction. However, it is stated that no one would believe that his or her life is fulfilling and gratifying if he or she ignored the reality that others are suffering an extreme sadness or deprivation in locations of turmoil and hardship elsewhere in the world. In terms of the Ring of Gyges argument on how to acquire genuine happiness, this implies we are unable to lead a fulfilled existence unless we add value to the betterment of humankind. The awareness that there are individuals struggling or that we are causing damage to others will not give us the key to a meaningful life.
Moving on, Professor A.C. Grayling also discussed human interaction. The scale of human misery caused by differences and conflicts is a tremendous strain on history. This remark is relevant to both readings since it argues that our distinctions particularly in terms of self-interest, produce disagreements and difficulties in mankind. Conversely, a picture of collaboration, common decency, and kindness that almost all human interaction encounters are favorable. These are the outcomes of individuals working together and honoring their pledges to accomplish what is required of them. This concept is comparable to the Ring of Gyges, which is an argument over whether people do decent actions because society demands them to, or merely because they want to. Consequently, there are other causes as to why the world is bad. The downsides of religion in our world are one of them. The second is connected to perspectives and belief systems, how our societies have traditionally attempted to regulate human interaction. As stated in Beyond Good and Evil, religion or slave morality, as well as societal systems or master morality, aim to dominate human involvement in order to compel one's conduct to be consistent with their moral standards. And so, when talking about homosexuality, as discussed by Professor Grayling, how society tends to have belief systems and impose principles predicated on those beliefs, legal principles, and the extremely forceful influence of social condemnation hinders the prospects for the happiness of a minority of people in the society, as these are the factors of serious suffering and concern. Usually, those who are against homosexuality are those who are within very religious groups, especially Christianity, and in connection with Beyond Good and Evil, Christianity is claimed to have set themselves as the standard or measure of all things. They have their own definition of concepts such as love. Hence, they dictate as to who one can love and states that any opposition of their ideals is considered a sin or disobedience. However, even in the Bible, there are immoral acts that are presented, emphasizing that despite being wrong, as long as there is reproduction, it can be justified. This indicates that there are customs that are accepted in one religion but may be viewed as immoral by others, or the other way around. When homosexual activity was decriminalized in the United Kingdom after centuries of prohibition, ethical contemplation on the rights and wrongs, as well as the reasoning for them, led to a moral transformation. Morality changes when individuals start to view things differently, provide alternative justifications, and declare that something is wrong. This is not for the mutual benefit of humans. It goes against the principles of human nature to limit, regulate, enforce, criminalize, and try to push individuals into a mold, attempting to make everyone the same and going against genuinely innocuous things. And this is a great illustration of how the world can be a dreadful place, for reasons that many people thought were positive. This demonstrates that multiple moral perspectives will always exist. This is because some individuals regard norms as advantageous, yet they are unaware of how these standards impact or restrict others. This brings us to the topic of religion. Professor Grayling highlighted that religious commitment sincerely exhibited by individuals who have a profound faith in a strong feeling of connection to the religious community in the religious traditions may convey an immense extent of psychological comfort and significant cultural abundance. However, as a worldview and a cause for ordering society, one way or another, and as a justification for attempting to enforce this one-size-fits-all system, religion has been the root of absolute agony and turmoil in our world through time. This is associated with the notion of beyond good and evil, wherein individuals have diversified normative views because there are forces such as religious devotion that may manipulate us into believing that only things imposed within this belief system are appropriate, and thus such agencies obliges us with a system.
Moving on, there is also an aspect of the discussion entitled, "Where are they now?" When an individual thinks to himself, "If I can persuade my fellows in this tribe that I can speak to these agencies and perhaps influence their behavior, then I'm going to get all the money and the girls." That's presumably how certain religions began. Corporeal forces discovered, and religions considered huge importance, according to Grayling. It is because if you can convince people that they are being monitored all the time by unseen officers and that they will be rewarded or penalized for what they do, you will have a tremendous system of influence over people's actions. This is comparable to the ring of Gyges, which claims that a just man could be righteous merely because there is a belief that someone, for example God, is watching us and may condemn us for our wrongdoings. And so, when discussing the psychology of religion, when unpleasant life events constantly occur, people tend to return to their childhood beliefs for comfort and support. If one goes to a church, which is a religious community, he will be greeted by good people and will experience all of the benefits that religious organizations provide, such as a feeling of belonging and a sense of shared purpose. Yet, Professor Grayling believes that recent conversions or retreats to religion indicate that it does not last long. And so, religion, particularly Christianity, has enforced conventional notions of what is good and wicked in reference to beyond good and evil. We become increasingly reliant on these ideas as we become acclimated to them. However, as Nietzsche contends about shifting away from these traditions, we can observe that, as times advanced, we became more open and ceased being limited by these customs. And for the last topic of the discussion, it questions, what's special about Christianity? The world has been injurious to a good and well-lived life because of its unlivable ethical beliefs asserted by the early Christians. They firmly cleaved to a conviction that they were living at the end of times, and in due time, the Messiah will come back, provided that one must remain prudent, pure, and obedient to the Christian mandates. We can also associate this with beyond good and evil. Moralists, due to their imposition of their self-appointed beliefs and experiences, hindered others from living their life as per their choices and beliefs. The gifts of humanity, such as innovation and creativity, are trampled upon. With this, there is an invitation to humanity to live as their most generous self with an empathetic outlook towards diversity of human greatness.
Upon exploring the different notions of philosophers, we have integrated various perspectives to form a thesis statement, namely, we all have different viewpoints and interpretations about morality and its influence to ourselves and other people. It is not solely based on what is right and wrong and good or bad, but it affects our relationships with people. If we go out of control or exceed too much, good things may become bad. With that, what may be good for you may be bad for others. What may be bad for you may be good for others. This implies that one size does not fit all. While in the common concept of all individuals having their own shapes and sizes, thus having their own specific conformities and preferences, the concept of morals and intentions is related to one's beliefs and judgments. Morality exists, differs, and varies from person to person, group to group, culture to culture, and other aspects of life or lifestyles. This is why we must be more open and accepting to diverse kinds of ideas and communities. This thesis statement can be related to the following main ideas of each discussion. First is the ring of Gyges stating that one may be moving towards the route of justice and morality, while the other may be moving towards the route of injustice and immorality. All of us strive to achieve the good and be a better person. In reality, even with the simplest form of power, people will utilize this as an opportunity or advantage to achieve and do whatever they desire, even up to the point where they don't only affect themselves but other people as well. As emphasized by Noorani 2018, power enables these individuals to get away with almost everything, as the commoners tend to believe, either willingly or coercively, anything which the power grabbers want them to believe. Hence, they turn a blind eye toward the actions of such individuals, making them invisible. With the ring of Gyges' power of invisibility and anonymity, this sets a representation or motivation for the equivalents of gaining money, authority, expertise, and force, especially if it's not your own. All of the things mentioned lead to the point that power that is good for you may be bad for others.
Second is Beyond Good and Evil, stating that morality is not only limited to a single interpretation, but in diverse interpretations. There is no fixed viewpoint or idea of phenomena, as they depend on people's interpretations and perceptions of the world. Nietzsche argued that we cannot reduce morality to a single standard or rule. Furthermore, Nietzsche wants us to achieve greatness, live ambitiously, be ambitious, and seek power. At the same time, we are challenged to look at the purpose of truth and life in a deeper perspective, to know and be aware of the concepts of good and evil and how they are applied to our morals. This is why there is no such thing as a moral phenomena, but a moral interpretation of phenomena. Through this, we are challenged to balance and attain our religious beliefs from our personal beliefs. Belief is defined as a state of mind when we consider something true even though we are not 100% sure or able to prove it, while religions are belief systems that relate humanity to spirituality, as of Council of Europe.
Third is A Good Life in a Bad World, stating that morals are not conditioned to the idea of one size fits all. Everyone wants to live and fulfill a good life, and no one wants to suffer through a bad life. We have the freedom to do and achieve anything, and all of these things lead to our satisfaction. However, freedom is limited. Not everyone can live the good life that they want to fulfill because of self-created problems and circumstances, on multiple factors, ethics, and results or consequences. People condemn factors of their unsatisfied life conditions, and they do not try to change it or make it better, as per IPL.org. Thus, a good life is not an equation solved through a dogmatic formula with a single answer befitting to all. With this, according to Westcott of 2020, there are different notions of a good life: the moral life, the life of pleasure, the fulfilled life, the meaningful life, and the finished life. Life is not simply based on how we live our life in accordance with our decisions and choices, but it is also defined by our behaviors, conceptions, pleasures, values, and outlooks for ourselves. Not everything in life may be ethical and acceptable for everyone. With a thesis statement in mind, we can now tackle the following guide questions. For the first question, given our reliance on Western ideas, ideologies, theories, perspectives, frameworks, do we as Filipinos have an idea, concept, framework, ideology, karunungan, perspective, pananaw that we can contribute to the conversation and prefer to the world as a real alternative to Western frameworks, theories, or ideas? For the second question, can we use this idea, perspective, or framework to help solve the current issues confronting all of humanity? Explain. For the third question, can we use this concept, idea, knowledge, perspective, or framework to enlighten us about specific philosophical and moral issues or concerns? Explain. For the first question, we, as Filipinos, have a concept or ideology that we may bring into the conversation and present to the world as a genuine alternative to Western frameworks, theories, or ideas. What we possess is distinguishing, and it stems from our cultures, customs, history, and recollections as a country and community, all of which are predicated on Filipino conceptual frameworks as perceived from a Filipino lens. According to Ronquillo of 2018, there exists a progression of Filipinos that plays an important role in the fundamental conduct of the country, the Filipino philosophy. As opposed to Western culture, Filipino society has distinct standards and values, particularly in terms of morality, what is right and wrong. To support our claim, consider how the Philippines is believed to adopt a more religious and conservative outlook than those of the Western countries, which makes these restrictive beliefs favorable while being receptive to unconventional thoughts is bad. As an outcome of establishing our conceptualizations, viewpoints, morals, and convictions, we may also be autonomous from Western ideologies, as Filipinos revere wisdom as well.
For the second question, As these suppositions or perspectives are associated with our thesis statement, it may be asserted that the idea can help solve the existing difficulties plaguing all of humanity through understanding the rationale behind this, as well as moral views on how to address them. With these issues, there has long been a moral debate about whether particular behaviors and things are seen favorably or adversely by others. Given that the majority of these concerns are the result of human intervention, it is critical to emphasize how morality, which is the propensity to assess conducts as righteous or wrong, and personal values, which are highly desired aims that stimulate people's behaviors, can influence one's actions, which can detrimentally contribute to these global challenges. For example, climate change and other environmental troubles are perceived as unpleasant by others. Thus, they make every effort they can to solve them, since creating solutions coincides with their own beliefs and moral ideals to do good. However, certain people, notably religious groups like evangelicals and Republicans, are less disposed than the wider populace to consider climate change as a grave and dangerous problem. Hence, disregarding it and asserting that God is in control of the climatic condition, as per Alpert 2022. Another case in point is a pandemic, in which most people wear a face mask and get vaccinated in the belief that they are doing a good deed for themselves and the general welfare. Whereas a minority of opinions inside of Catholicism validates the justness of religious exclusions, such as refusing vaccines, irrespective of the ramifications of the virus to other people, according to Cause 2021. Furthermore, in the context of wildlife extinction, some perceive habitat destruction and exploitation as acceptable ways to fulfill their agenda and acquire a profit from it, whilst others see these activities as reprehensible and hence fight for their aims to save the species as they consider this to be pleasant. This and other cases, in accordance with the thesis statement, enable us to comprehend why some issues are not progressing or being addressed, mainly because we cannot move forward if diverse moral viewpoints and self-interests prevail.
For the third inquiry, this idea, like the one expressed in the second question, can enlighten us on specific philosophical or moral matters. As various individuals have different perspectives on what is right and wrong, there will perpetually be a discussion between acceptance and condemnation regarding one's practices. For example, several religions and conservative cultures across the world regard premarital sex, masturbation, contraception, and other sexual acts, constructs, or objects to be sinful, as of Burke of 2020. However, numerous people are far more open-minded and supportive of these beliefs, particularly younger generations, because they view respecting others' choices as good as long as nobody is harmed or stepped on. Another philosophical matter concerns warfare and its operations, considering whether they are justifiable as it is vital to safeguard the country, or immoral because it entails battling and killing other people while also harming innocent souls, as of Mudumba of 2022. One illustration is the resistance of the Philippines against conquerors of the times, particularly during World War II. In terms of business ethics, certain products are advantageous when it comes to their services and functions for people's wants and needs. However, some enterprises are considered unethical since, behind these products, they exploit children as labor workers, test their goods on animals, or adversely affect the environment and endanger human lives. A case in point is the moral competence of self-driving automobiles like Tesla, as of Call of 2022, and Western corporations such as Gap, which were exposed to child labor in their operation of production, as of Ramachandran of 2020. Thus, corporate social responsibility and justice are essential because they may enable a corporation to be more conscious and accountable for its effects on society, as of Fernando of 2022. More philosophical and moral dilemmas may be illuminated by the thesis statement, all of which go down to the notion that we should reflect upon on. something can be good for one but bad for another. I would rather choose and follow the path towards a righteous life, even though there will be challenges and obstacles along the way. But in the end, living a life according to how we define and make it will give us new opportunities, lessons, and strengths. Life isn't meant to be easy, it's meant to be lived.
I would rather embark on the righteous path, because a life of injustice is a life ensnared in greed and darkness, where we could never find contentment nor genuine satisfaction. After all, it is our choices and how we live our lives that define who we truly are.
I would choose the good and just path since, in my judgment, individuals who do injustice for the sake of life satisfaction construct their personal inexorable inferno, from which they conjure it as a make-believe illusory of temporary bliss, and therefore cannot be genuinely happy.